Khaled sat back down in his place, lost in thought about what was happening to him, recalling everything since he had first found himself in the desert. That nagging question he had always avoided pressed harder than ever. Where was he? And what was this Zikola, a land he had never heard of, with such bewildering people? Some seemed rational, but many had nothing to do with reason at all. His body jolted as another thought struck him. What if the passageway had carried him back in time, like the stories he'd always read in foreign literature? What? Could that really be true? No, he argued with himself. That's just imagination. I've never heard of Zikola before, never read a word about it. But then his own voice rose against him. But why not? The horses pulling carriages, the people's clothes. There's no way these belong to the 21st century. These are things from centuries past. Then he tried to reason with himself again. Maybe this is some isolated land no one knows about, and this is simply their national dress. But another voice inside him shouted back, "What land? The distance I walked through that passageway couldn't have been more than a kilometer or two. No, I must have traveled through time. The proof is that they speak Arabic, yet have no idea what Egypt is. Where else in the world do people speak Arabic except in the—" He clutched his head in his hands. "I feel like I can't think straight. I used to be smarter than this," he muttered, then stared off into the distance. But that's proof enough. I did travel back in time. He had just said this when he noticed a group of men carrying swords and shields, marching in formation like soldiers. Startled, he stood up and hurried toward the boy who had been playing with his friends, grabbed him by the arm and asked, "I just want to ask you one question. What year is this?" The boy, clearly in a hurry, frowned at him. "You must have had too much to drink. This is the end of the 2009th year, sir." Khaled staggered backward, his head spinning until he collapsed as if he had fainted. The boy laughed and called out to him, "Yes, sir. I think some sleep will do you good." Then he left him there and walked away. The next morning, Khaled opened his eyes to the sound of a loud commotion. He found himself lying on the side of a street. Quickly he stood up, brushed the dust off his clothes, and tried to fix his appearance. As he looked ahead, he rubbed his hair in astonishment. Crowds of people were walking in perfect order in one direction, all of them dressed in what seemed to be brand new clothes. Men held the hands of women. Girls walked hand in hand with other girls, faces glowing with extraordinary beauty. They moved joyfully, each wearing a garland of flowers around the neck, while enchanting music filled the air. Music unlike anything Khaled had ever heard. The players wore unusual garments, carrying drums, stringed instruments, and wind instruments he did not recognize, yet they produced a sound so magnificent it captivated him. Among the crowd were young men on horseback. Each had a girl seated behind him, her left arm wrapped around his waist, while her right hand waved flowers high into the air. Khaled smiled. "Now I know why everyone looks forward to this day," he murmured. His eyes followed acrobats performing daring tricks until, suddenly, he spotted the wealthy carriage, the same one he and Yaman had clung to back in the desert. It now rolled proudly through the throng. From it stepped a stunningly beautiful young woman. At her appearance, the crowd erupted with joy, their excitement growing as she began scattering flowers. People rushed eagerly to catch them. She tossed flowers high above, and young men collided in their desperate attempts to seize them, which only widened her delicate smile. Khaled watched, deeply moved, his gaze fixed on her face, a strange calm settling in his heart. Then a young woman approached him. "Why are you standing alone? I can accompany you today, free of charge." Khaled glanced at her, then back at the girl from the carriage. "No, thank you," he replied, turning away. In the distance, he caught sight of Yaman. Pushing through the crowd, he reached him with some difficulty. "Yaman, do you remember me?" Khaled called out. Yaman smiled warmly. "Of course. Welcome, my friend." He looked Khaled over. "Congratulations on your new attire. So, How was your first day in Zikola? With all the noise around them, Khaled had to raise his voice. My first day? I don't even understand what's happening to me yet. Yaman chuckled. Perhaps because these are Zikola's festivals. Once they're over, life will return to normal. These days are exceptional, unlike any others. Khaled grinned. If only that were true. So tell me, where's your lovely companion? Yaman frowned. What? Khaled laughed. I mean your beloved. Most of the young men seem to have someone with them. Yaman smiled faintly. No. I haven't committed myself to anyone yet. Khaled looked ahead. And where are we heading? To the celebration ground. Yaman replied with a laugh. Where all of Zikola's people gather, and where someone will be sacrificed. Ah, yes, the poor man, Khaled muttered, walking alongside Yaman with the others. Then he pointed toward the girl tossing flowers from the carriage. Yaman, who is she? That's Aseel, Yaman answered. Zikola's physician. Aseel, the physician, Khaled whispered to himself. At that moment, she threw a flower high into the air. It drifted toward Khaled, and though many young men leapt for it, he used his height to his advantage, catching it before anyone else could. He looked at her, smiling. She returned a smile so radiant that he stood dazed for a heartbeat. As they walked on, Khaled breathed in the sweet fragrance of the flower in his hand. The music soared through the air. The scent of blossoms filled his chest, and for a while he forgot the questions he had been asking himself about the land of Zikola. He kept close to Yaman, his eyes drawn to the carriage and to Aseel, who smiled each time someone caught one of her flowers. But another girl, the one whose offer he had refused earlier, never stopped staring at him. Whenever his eyes accidentally met hers, she would stick out her tongue in anger, making Khaled laugh quietly to himself before turning back toward Aseel, inhaling the perfume of the flower and smiling. They continued until they reached a vast field. Khaled was stunned to see an enormous crowd, surely more than 50,000 people. Who are all these people? He asked Yaman in awe. They are the people of Zikola, Yaman explained. They've come from many different regions. We came from just one area. The others are from across the land. Just then, a young man rushed toward Yaman. They embraced tightly, Yaman's face lighting up with joy. This is my lifelong friend, Iyad, Yaman said proudly, before gesturing to Khaled. And this is Khaled, my new friend. He seems an honorable man, and I'm sure he'll be yours too. Khaled shook Iyad's hand with a smile. Yes, we'll be friends until I leave soon. Iyad burst out laughing. Leave? He turned to Yaman, grinning. Your friend wants to leave. He laughed again, but Khaled's face darkened at his mockery. He looked back at Yaman. Is it really so strange that I want to leave?